Hello, everyone. I think we're online. My goodness. We'll just do a couple of last checks on the sound. The microphone is on. The internet, I think, is on. Oh dear. Why does this always happen on a Sunday? The internet was working all day, and then at 4 o'clock, it just decided to pack in. Oh dear. Right. Hello, everybody. Sorry for the late start. Welcome to a millinery studio live stream. My name is Ilona. I'm a milliner based in London, and today we're going to carry on from where we left off last week when we were making a tooled rose flower. Oh, do you know what? Because it's taken so long to actually connect, let's get straight into things. Before we jump into the flower, I'd like to show you a bit about what I've been working on this whole week. I've had a very intense week. Let me just switch camera views and show you what I've been working on. It's all been very, very exciting. Okay, perfect. So now we know that the cameras work as well. This is what I've been working on. Did you guys see my last video? This is the hat from that last video. Here it is. This is the octopus-inspired hat in all its glory. I really, really love how it's turned out. This is the inside. The inside is actually the bit I am the most proud of. All those curves in that petersham. So time-consuming, but so worth it. With the two little metal combs there. It's the first time I've used combs like this. So I don't know exactly how they'll hold up, but I will, once the competition is over and judged, and I'll know if I need to send the hat off or not for extra judging. Once all that's over, then I'm going to wear this hat out and about and test how these combs work, because I'm half convinced about them, but I'm not fully convinced. So I guess we'll see. So that's this hat. And the other thing I've been working on, there's two other things I've been working on this week. I had a very exciting commission for 100 velvet leaves. So this is not 100 leaves. This is what 50 velvet leaves look like. So this is half of the amount I've made. The other half aren't quite finished yet, but this is just taken up the whole week so far, and I've got the last 50 to finish up. They're essentially almost finished, but they just need a little bit of pleating at the end. So this is 50 of the 100 leaves, and I'm very proud of them. I've grouped them into groups of 5 so that when I hand them over to my client, they know how many bunches they're in. It's a very exciting project. It's for a conjurer, a magician, who's making a very exciting illusion that he needs 100 leaves for. And to be honest, I've actually really enjoyed making these for him, because it's a very different part of the world where you can apply millinery skills, not in a hat context, but in a stage show context. And I really enjoyed learning about all of that. Of course, I am not privy to the ins and outs of the trick, obviously. So all I know is that I'm just making 100 velvet leaves, and the end trick, the end illusion, sounds absolutely fabulous. And hopefully I'll be able to share that with you guys when the project is all done, but I don't know how long the entire project of making the illusion is going to take. I have absolutely no idea of the timescales, but this has been a very intense week for my flower tools, tooling all these leaves. So there we go. Look at them. Aren't they gorgeous? I found another company where I can order silk from in this color. Sherry says, a conjurer commission, that's fantastic. Has he invited you to come and see the show? Well, the conjurer is actually my friend, so I'm sure that when he gets round to finishing the trick and as part of the show, then I'm sure I will get a preview, hopefully. And also I'll have to check with him, but maybe I could share it with you guys as well. And he's an absolutely awesome magician and conjurer, and I will definitely share his details with you guys if you're ever looking for a conjurer to come and entertain you guys. He is spectacular. Right, those are the leaves. Hello, Roberta. Oh, Roberta, I think you asked me about subtitles at some point. I can't remember what language you wanted them in, but I do have answers on subtitles. So while you're there, for this is just a public service announcement for anyone who's asking for subtitles. I pretty much really only know English, so I can't do translations into other languages and create subtitles for every single language out there. But Google, and specifically YouTube, use auto-translate for subtitles. Now, I've been trying to figure out exactly how that works, and the way that works is, if you're watching me on a desktop computer or on a laptop, so not a mobile device, to see subtitles in auto-translate, you can't be on a mobile phone. I don't know if you can be on an iPad or a tablet or anything like that, but this definitely works on a desktop computer or a laptop. What you have to do is, in the kind of settings bar at the bottom of the video, you click the cog icon. You turn on the subtitles, then you click the cog icon, and then you select the subtitles to auto-translate, and you pick your language. And whilst it might not be 100% accurate, it's at least something if English isn't your first language and you find it a bit difficult to understand what I say, because I probably speak a bit too fast, and I'm sorry about that. So I hope that helps. So all of you asking for subtitles, there is a way to get them, but it's not really up to me to do that. You have to find that yourself through the YouTube interface. So I hope that helps. And just for the comments in the chat, let's all stick to English, because I don't have an auto-translate feature on my YouTube chat, so I don't know what you're saying if you don't say it in English. But yes, I hope that helps. Shall we look at one last thing that I've been working on today while I'm waving around these leaves? Oh, they're so pretty, aren't they? Look at them. They're so gorgeous. This is an avocado colored silk, by the way. It's so nice. Anyway, right, I'm going to put the leaves away before I play around with them too much. The other thing I've been working on, you might remember this beret from a few streams ago, where we unblocked the beret off the puzzle block, and then I shaped it, I put a ribbon inside it here, and I've also now trimmed it with a bow on the front, this little green bow. Now, my idea is that I want the bow to be interchangeable, because, you know, I might have a green coat one day, but then on another day I might have a black coat and I want to wear it with a red scarf, and the green bow won't match, so I'm going to want a red bow. And I figured out how to achieve that on the hat. So I've made a whole bunch of bows. So, I haven't yet made the red ones, and I haven't yet made the white ones, but I have made a second green one, a black one, which is very, very black indeed, this gorgeous golden mustardy yellow one, and a pink one. So those are the bows I've made so far, and the way that I'm going to attach them to the hat is going to be on these little pins. So if I take some out and show you. So the way these pins work is I can sew the bows on through these holes, and then they're little brooch blanks, essentially. Here they are. Oh, let's focus that. There we go. So this is a little brooch blank, and it can be, the bows will just be sewn on like this onto there, and then they get attached to the hat like this, so you can see from the top. it's attached on. So interchangeable bows on the barrow, which I'm really excited about. But by the time I've gotten around to finishing this, we're almost out of felt hat weather. It's been very gloriously sunny today in London, and definitely not winter hat weather. Right, I shall put these to one side now, and let's jump into the rose. The long-awaited rose. Right, we should review what we went over in the last live stream. This is my box of things. So, what did we do last time? I also had my piece of paper with all the instructions to myself, all my notes. Let's have a look. What did we do? We made a cotton bud a rosebud. There it is, out of cotton wool. And just refocus again. Hopefully that's focused. So we made this rosebud. So if you weren't able to join us for the last live stream, the making of this is in that last live stream. Here it is. So it's on a bit of wire that was bent in half, and then the cotton wool was put into it and wrapped around it and formed into this using some PVA glue. That's that one. And then we made some we made the actual stamens from scratch. So if you can't buy stamens, you can make your own stamens, and I have a video on that, and I did that in the live stream as well last time. So here are some of these stamens, which I didn't finish live because it was very time consuming, but I then, once the stream finished, I went and finished them off. So these are the black ones. This was a bit of cornstarch and PVA and acrylic paint to paint the tips of them. So hopefully you will remember those. And then once we had the stamens made, we made the center of the flower, which in this case, this was the pink one, but I'm making a blue rose today, so I'll be using blue stamens. But this was a pink one that we made last time on the last live stream. So it's the double bit of wire folded in the middle with the stamens bound there, and you get one of these. And today I will be needing, hopefully we'll finish the flower today. I have very high hopes for this. So here's my blue one. I didn't make these stamens, I bought these stamens, but they are handmade, they're not factory made. So that'll be the stamen for today. So let me put these away. Once I've made the stamens and they're all dry, I find it easy to keep them in either in little like jewelry boxes or in these plastic Ziploc bags. I don't know if they have a name, but these kind of little plastic baggies, and that just keeps them all grouped together from every batch. And I can sort them by color like this as well. So these are just the black ones, which I'm not going to use today. What else did we make? We made them into the center. Oh, and then we stiffened some silk. Do you guys remember that with the PVAs? That was using polyvinyl alcohol stiffener. So this particular PVA is polyvinyl acetate, which is like a very plasticky glue. It's just the normal craft glue, school glue, wood glue, this white one. You can use this in the same diluted proportions of about 1 to 2 or even 1 to 4, depending on how stiff you want the fabric, by volumes. So yeah, you can use this, but I happen to use polyvinyl alcohol just because I have it and it's cheaper, I think, than this kind of craft glue. One day I will do a explanation video on exactly what the differences are. Right, so we've got to tool some leaves now before we go any further. So let me find those velvet leaves that we had. So I only need to, I think, tool one leaf because the other, we're aiming to end up here. So this is, I've got 3 stages of leaves here. So this is stage 1. This is stage 2. In fact, let me zoom in on that. There we go. That's still in focus. Hopefully that's in focus. This is stage 1, this is stage 2, and then this is stage 3 with the pleat. So I'll take you through those steps in a second. Let's see what else I've got in this box of things. Ooh, before I forget, I had a comment on one of my previous live streams where we discovered the friction ball pen for drawing on fabric, and then the iron magically with the heat evaporated the pen. Someone commented, and I can't remember their name. You can go and have a look at the comment if you want to see exactly what they said. But they said that it's advisable to be careful with these pens and test them, because apparently sometimes when the fabric gets cold again, the lines can reappear. So, and I did reply to the comment, and I said that I would go and test it by drawing on some silk samples and some cotton samples and popping them in my freezer, just to see if the lines from the black pen came back. But after I said that, I got distracted by something else, probably another hat, and I forgot to go and do that. So I will do that today after this live stream. I'm going to ask my husband to make sure to remind me to test this pen after the live stream, and then I'll post the results maybe in a comment under this stream once it's uploaded. Right, so that's the friction pen. So beware, be careful. It might not be as magic as it should be. Right, let me get out all the components for the flower out of this box. I've got all these various types of thread. Then I've got the flower patterns, which I cut out. I can't remember if I cut them out live on stream or not, but here they are. And we'll decide on some colours again later. Maybe we'll do some more polls, because that was fun once I figured out how it worked. And then I've got some extra bits of fabric cut on the bias, which we'll get to after I've tooled the flower. We'll deal with these last. These are going to be for the bud. So I don't know, in case you're following along live, you're going to need some bias strips of fabric. They're about 4 centimeters wide, and just an arbitrary length, maybe about 15 centimeters long. And I think that that's everything out of this box that I need for now. So the aim is to keep the work desk tidy. Okay, so let's see if this week I can manage to get everything in shot. No, that's a really small work surface for me. If I zoom back out, whoops, maybe there. And then you guys can see on the side the tool as it heats up. That's visible. There we go. Okay, right. Shall we go over the flower tools before we start? Must have some pliers next to me for these tools, and I also need a little screwdriver because of the way the soldering iron works. I think what I'm going to do is start by tooling the velvet leaf, just because that requires 2 tools that we won't be using for the rose. So we'll be using the single vein tool, which is this little wheel that's not articulated and it has just a single ridge on it. And then we'll be using the double veining tool, which is also like a little wheel. It looks like a mini pizza cutter really, except the wheel doesn't move, and it's got a ridge, it's got 2 of these discs on it, so the middle forms a ridge that goes around the wire. So I'm going to load up my flower tool. The flower tool is currently off, and you'll see me flicking it on and off behind me at that plug point there, just to keep a constant temperature. So I've popped that in, tightening that up. Make sure it's nice and tight, because I found that as it heats up, obviously the metal is, I think it expands with the heat, and so the nib, the actual nozzle, becomes a bit loose, and as sometimes I've been tooling flowers and then it gets really hot, and so the metal expands and the tool just falls out, even though I definitely tightened the screw. So hopefully that won't happen this time. because I have definitely tightened it. Let's double check it. Nope, that's definitely tight. Okay. I will need a soft, a semi-hard surface to tool this flower on. So I'm just going to get my ironing board out and I'm going to turn the tool on now. Perfect, that's on. And I know it's on because this one's got LED lights in it. Oh. This is what my ironing board looks like after all those velvet leaves that I was tooling, all the evidence. I think I'm going to maybe just flip that up like that, just so that I don't get any green velvet on the nice thunder grey velvet. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long to heat up. The different sized nozzles for the tools will all heat up at different rates. So the smaller your tool, the quicker it will heat up. So you just want to make sure that you keep an eye on it and kind of test the heat. And to test the heat of it, obviously don't touch it with your finger, otherwise you might burn yourself. What I've got next to me is this, which is just a damp flannel towel, which I'm going to keep by the side of me, and to test whether my flower tool is hot enough, I'll just gently tap it, and if I can hear a sizzle, then the flower tool is hot enough. So that's right next to me, and I'll test it when I think the tool is hot enough. Hi Jackie. Jackie says, I joined late, what are you creating today? Welcome Jackie, thank you for joining us. I'm continuing off from where we left off on the last live stream I did, where we were halfway through making a rose like this. So this one's orange, but we're making a blue one today. It's going to be for my mum for her birthday, which is now from last month. I'm sorry, Mum, I've been a bit busy. So that'll be her birthday, her very late birthday present when I finish the flower. But it will, in fact, let's have a, should we, while the tool heats up, let's analyze what this flower is. So it's a rose consisting of, I think, 10 layers of different types of fabrics with handmade stamens in the middle, and then a rosebud and 3 velvet leaves. And it's all made out of silk or cotton, so natural fibers. So we're just continuing on from that. So if you haven't seen that live stream, don't click away, watch this one, and then go back and watch the other one to see the part 1. Essentially in part 1 we prepped everything, and now we're just putting it all together. Right, I'm going to test the sizzle. Let's see, will you hear the sizzle? I'm going to hold it up to the microphone. I don't know if that was audible. I definitely heard a sizzle, so it's definitely hot enough, and I'm going to turn it off with the plug. So, this is the double veining tool, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think I already demoed it once before in some of my other videos. But the way to use this one is I've got my wire sticking out from in between my 2 layers of fabric, which I've bonded together using Bonder Web. And I'm going to find where this wire is and make sure it's placed in between that ridge. And hopefully all this is in focus. And then I'm going to very slowly press in gently and run it up the leaf. Right, that's definitely turned off. So can you guys see, if I tilt it towards the light, you can see what that tool did. It just highlighted the wire. And there's 2 points to this. First, the point of this is twofold. You've got, in a leaf in general, you will have a central vein that's very visible, so it's like a nice design element to add in. And the second thing that this does, there's a practical reason for doing this to the stem in the middle of the flower, and that's just in case your iron didn't quite melt your Bonder Web around the wire inside the 2 bits of fabric, because sometimes that can happen. The heat from the tool will definitely melt the Bonder Web that's inside here, and it will adhere to that wire, which is precisely why we're using cotton covered wire. So there's something for that Bonder Web to stick to. So it'll hold it in place very, very well. So there we go, practical and design reason. The other thing to notice is that as I tooled, I didn't go to the very tip of the leaf, because I think it just looks nicer if you just stop about 1 centimeter away from that edge. I just think it looks a little bit neater and a little bit more kind of ethereal, whereas if you just went straight up all the way to the top, I think it can look very geometric. And if that's what you're going for, then perfect, do that. You do whatever you want. There's technically no right or wrong way to any of this, as long as you're following the health and safety guidelines. But design-wise, you do what you want. So if you wanted to go to the top for like a really geometric look, then it would kind of fold the leaf in half. And that's what I mean by a geometric look. But if you're just looking to get a kind of semi-natural looking leaf, I would just stop just shy off the end with the tool so that it stops just about there. That's the tip of my leaf, and that's where I've stopped the tool. Now, let's change the tool tip. It's definitely off. I'm going to unscrew. And then I'm going to use some pliers to pick up the tool because it's hot. Pop it down on my mat. So this is a silicone mat, this black thing over here in the corner. That's where I'm resting all the tools. It's heat proof, so I'm protecting my surfaces. And then I'm going to put in the single veining tool, which is the one that definitely looks like a pizza cutter. And let's just tighten that. Lovely. And I'm going to turn the tool back on again. And we'll wait for that to heat up while I take a sip of tea. What's everybody drinking today? I am starting off with a lovely mug of Darjeeling, and then once I finish this, I'm going to move on to a green tea called Hyson, which is one of my favourite plain green teas. What's everyone else drinking? Oh, Michael says sparkling water, very fancy. And Jackie says, I enjoyed my coffee with a scoop of hot cocoa mix. Ooh, everyone's having very fancy drinks today. I feel like my drink isn't anywhere near as fancy as all of yours. And Sherry says, I have had 2 coffees, so I should probably switch to water. That might be a very good idea. Certainly when I've had 2 coffees, and I drink my coffee in a very European way, it's essentially just a shot of espresso with a tiny bit of milk, so it's very strong. And after having 2 of those in a row, I definitely need to down a glass of water. Right, should we see if this sizzles? This is my favourite bit. I love the sound of sizzling things. That sizzled. Once again, I don't know if that translates, but it definitely sizzled. The other way to check, of course, is to just tool your surface, and you'll see, look, that left a line there, so I know it's hot enough. So I'm going to turn it off with the plug. And then I'm going to tool some of the veins. Now, there's obviously different ways to do this. I'm using a European set of tools. If I was using a Japanese set of tools, the one that kind of comes not with discs, but with like little spoons on the end, the way the Japanese tools are used is you go from the outside edge in. But when I tried that with these European tools, that was very difficult to do. In fact, let me just show you. This is just my screwdriver, but imagine this is one of those Japanese flower tools with a spoon on the end of it. With this one, you'd start at the end and then you'd kind of take it in like that. Did you see that? So from the outside edge to the inside and down along the stem. But when I tried that with this wheel European tool, I found it to be a bit too unwieldy for that. It's kind of too big to do that very precisely. So I prefer to do the opposite motion to that. So I'm going to start at the stem and kind of curve upwards. And you can see that pattern on this leaf. Or maybe you can't, but I will There we go. You can see that pattern on this leaf, those arcs. So let me just do that over here. And I'll have to do it quite quickly. So hopefully you can see that in the lighting. And before the tool cools down, I'm going to do the other side in exactly the same way. And I'm applying just a small bit of pressure as I'm doing this. I don't want to, oh, excuse me. I don't want to really push down into it. I'm just kind of applying enough pressure that I can feel the padding underneath, but I'm not trying to slice it like using a knife. And then it's totally up to you to decide how many of these veins you want. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other. It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be different. If you're unsure, always refer to the best number sequence in the world, the Fibonacci number sequence. So if you don't know what the Fibonacci number sequence is, that's the number sequence found in nature. And it goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. And what it is it's the sum of the two previous numbers is the next number in the sequence. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on. And that's just a number sequence found in nature a lot. So it works with these kind of organic leaves when you're designing flowers and thinking about how many numbers of things to do on each item. Jackie has a question. Jackie says, would there be a way to get a similar effect without a specific tool? That's a very good question, and yes, there is. Let me see if I have a spare leaf to demonstrate on how to do this without the tool. I have a feeling I don't have a spare leaf. No, I don't have a spare leaf in my box, so let's pretend. So this is my leaf. Let's pretend there aren't any lines in it. And this is my ironing board. And I don't have a flower tool, but what I do have is a steam iron. So you will need a tool, and that will just be some scissors. You probably don't want to use scissors with a sharp point like this. This is too sharp. I don't have my non-sharp pointy scissors with me. I don't know where they are. In fact, I lost them a week ago and I still haven't found them, so that's a lost cause. Let me show you with something else though. Aha, this is perfect. So this is a tweezer with a bent thing on the end, and can you see how this has got a kind of a point to it, but it's not too pointy. So the reason you don't want anything too pointy is because you could scratch the fabric and tear it. So you want something that comes to a point, but it's not sharp. So just like this leg. So I wouldn't use this tip because this is sharp, but I would use this little foot here. And what you'd do is you'd get your iron. Let's pretend that my hand is my steam iron. So I've got it plugged in. It's on the hottest setting. I've got my leaf. I pop the steam iron onto my leaf, press the steam button a few times. Steam comes out. This is the steam. And then as soon as I take the iron off, I put it to one side and I get my tool and I just very quickly do the motion that I did with the flower tool, except going outwards. So from the inside, just very quickly with the tool while the velvet is hot. 1, 2, 3, 4, however many times. And on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4. It won't be as defined as with the flower tool. So if I try and catch the light with it, this is with the flower tool, it's really defined. But with something that's not got a sharp point and isn't the flower tool, so with just the steam iron and something like this set of tweezers, or a pair of sewing scissors but not the sharp point type sewing scissors, like craft scissors, you will get some definition, but it won't be this much and it won't be this neat, but it will still look good, I promise you. Before I got the set of flower tools, that's how I used to make flowers. And to be honest, the only reason I use the flower tools now on these is just because I have them. If I only had a set of flower tools that had the balls and not the veining tools, then I would just carry on using the method with the iron and a semi-blunt, semi-sharp point of something like this. I hope that made sense, Jackie. Did that answer your question? Kind of went off on a bit of a tangent there about scissors. Right. This is probably cooled down enough to take the veining tool out. And once again, I've got my pliers here and I'm going to pop it onto this black pad on the side of the screen that you can just about see to cool down. That's a silicone pad to protect the surfaces. And the next tool I'm going to use is going to be one of the ball tools. I've just got to decide on the size. We'll finish the leaf later with the sewing and things. We're just going to use the tools in one section, then we'll take a break, and then we'll actually assemble the flower once we've tooled everything. So, I'm going to decide on the size of the tool that I want to use. Hi Rachel! Don't worry, you haven't missed much. We were just discussing how to achieve veining on leaves without the use of flower tools. So that was an interesting discussion. So guys, if you don't know, La Bricalouse, that's Rachel from the YouTube channel La Bricalouse. She's also a wonderful milliner. She also has a YouTube channel, and she's also one of the moderators in the chat. So give Rachel all your love, and I'm sure Rachel will be able to answer some of your questions too if you have them. And also go and visit her YouTube channel once we're done on the live stream. It's very, very good. Right, back to the flowers. We are picking the size of the tools. So the size of your tool is mainly going to depend on the size of your flower. So this is the biggest tool that came in my set that I bought online, and it's the 3 centimeter diameter ball, and it's rather large. I think it might actually be too large for this, yes. So, although, I mean, I guess it could work, but I think it's a bit large. The bigger the ball, the more, the flatter your leaf will end up, if that makes sense. So if I push the bigger ball into the edge of my petal, can you see how it's crinkling on the edges there without me having to really press down much? So if I wanted quite an open, flat rose, then I guess you could use the larger tool, which is about kind of the same diameter as the flower pattern. You can see from the overhead view there of how large that is. But I actually want to, I know my flower has turned out quite open, but my aim is to try and get more of a cupped rose. So I'm actually going to try and use the 2.5 centimeter tool, which I think is what I used on my last one. And if I press that in, can you see how much more that's crinkled the edges over here? So I think this is the right size. So that'll be my bigger tool. And then I'll also need a smaller ball tool to try and curve the edges there. Let's have a look. What sizes have I got here? So the 1.8 is definitely going to be too big. I think the 1 centimeter. Yeah, the 1 centimeter, maybe even the 8 millimeter one. Do you know, I really can't remember what I used on the last flower I made. I should have made some notes. Maybe I did make some notes somewhere. Did I make some notes? Nope. Oh well, let's see. Would this one have worked? What I'm doing now is just trying to compare the size of the ball to the dents in the hat. In the fabric. Oh, maybe I do have a note. No, that's the wrong note. That's the note for the hat, not the rose. When I work on hats, I pin notes to them with my steps that I did to make them and how long each step took, just so I can time myself. And then I try and beat my record the next time I make the hat. So if you're bored when you're making hats and you want some extra time pressure, that's how to achieve that. I think I'm going to try with the 8mm tool today and see how fluffy we can get those edges looking with the 8mm tool rather than 1 centimeter tool. And that's exactly how I'm going to start. So I'm going to plug this in and tighten it up. And if this turns out too small, that's okay. I can just flatten the leaf out again and do it with the 1mm one. Right, that's plugged in, and let's turn it on. There it is. I'm going to clean up my work surface a bit again. I no longer need this because I use the ironing board cover as my kind of semi-hard surface for the veining tools, but for the ball tools you need a really soft surface. So this is a sponge. I think it's like one of those giant car washing sponges, that's all it is. So it's just got a nice firmness to it, like this. The veining tools will not work on a sponge like this because you'll completely dent your entire leaf as you go. So when you're working with the veining tools, you want to have a relatively flat surface so that you can draw defined lines. But with the ball tools, you want to be able to cup around something. So that's why I'm using a soft sponge. And I'm covering this sponge in a layer of silk fabric. You can also use a cotton or a muslin or something, as long as it's natural fibers, because it will protect the sponge from melting under the heat of the tool. So that's what this is. And into my little pad of, this is a face flannel towel. I've dampened it with water. It's not sopping wet, it's damp. And I was checking the sizzle of the tool against it, but I'm also going to dampen the petal because it will hold its shape a bit better when it's dry, once it's been tooled, if it's just been slightly dampened in the cloth. Might as well check for sizzle. No, not yet. Not hot enough. I'm going to keep this in here for a little while longer. Is it time to switch teas yet? Almost. Now it's time to switch teas. Here it is. Very important to stay hydrated. Right, ooh. Oh, there's definitely a sizzle there. Oh, in fact, it's very, very sizzly and very, very hot. So I definitely need to turn that off. And it's stuck something to its... Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this is the leaf. The leaf isn't damp at all. It's just slightly... It's just been slightly wetted, and you can see it's kind of starting to curl by itself along its kind of grain lines, which is what it's supposed to do. But the leaf shouldn't be damp at all. It should just be like it's just a bit dewy. Right, let's start tooling this. So I'm going to run this ball tool. Oh dear. Well, that went wrong, didn't it? This is definitely too hot. Okay. Oh well, never mind. This will be, so this was an experiment and I have a feeling it's not going to work. Right, I'm going to start cooling the tool down by kind of wrapping the end of it in the flannel. Try and really cool that down. We'll use this in one of the bottom layers and hopefully that won't show up. So this is cotton. Normally I do this with silk. This is the first time I'm doing it with cotton, so this might not work, which is possibly what we were seeing, and I should probably have tested it. Really going to cool that tool down. This is exactly what I was saying about the smaller the tool, the smaller the nozzle, the faster it heats up, and I spent too long talking and drinking tea. Oh, it's so sizzly. Okay. Okay, that's should be marginally better. Let's see. Oh, that's much better. Okay. So the motion I'm doing, I'm just going around the edge of the leaf there. And I'm not pressing in too much. This isn't the stage for pushing right into the cushion. Can you see how just even very, whoops, oh dear, very gently pressing in is forcing that edge to curve up. And this is going to be the underside of the leaf. This is going to be the wrong side of the leaf. Because what we'll do next is turn it over and use the other ball tool on it. Shari says, does cotton burn easier than silk? I didn't think it would, but clearly it does. Rachel is probably more qualified to answer the question. And yes, Rachel says it does because cotton is a plant fibre and silk is a protein fibre. That's very good to know. Okay, so when working on the cotton leaves, I really shouldn't heat this tool up very much at all. The other thing I'm noticing with the cotton is that I feel like the grain line is way more pronounced than it is in the silk fabric. What do I mean by that? I mean, it seems to really make a difference about how the tool works depending on where the grain line is. So for example, on this one where the grain line is going straight through the center of the leaf, it's only slightly kind of lipped up like this. But where the grain line is going on the next leaf, it's kind of turned about. It's turned a bit, and the grain line is now here. So you can see it's become a lot more folded. Let's turn this on. Hopefully it won't get too hot. All this talking, it's kind of cooled the tool down. So I find it very helpful to hold the sponge with my hand. Oh, let's turn that off. I'm starting to think that this ball tool wasn't the best idea for the edges of this cotton rose, but let's see what effect it gives us. I mean, you know, this is just an experiment. I've only ever made this using just silk. Essentially, the aim here is to just curl the edges of the leaves just up a tiny, tiny bit so that when we then tool them on the other side with the big ball, it'll create more interesting folds on the edges. So that's it done. Let's do another one. I might need to turn this back on again. Hopefully that won't get too hot. Oh, I didn't put it inside the little damp cloth. In an ideal world, I'd kind of have two soldering irons set up, one with the small ball tool and one with the 2.5 centimeter ball tool, and I would do one petal at a time, as in one pattern at a time. So I do on the same one with the small ball and then use the other soldering iron and do the big ball straight away while this is still slightly damp. But this way everything's going to kind of dry up. But oh well. Okay, let's try this again on this cotton. Hopefully that's not too hot. That seems okay. So the other motion you can do is kind of just gently jab at it like this, and I guess that looks like it's not going to give such a pronounced line at the lip, which might actually be better for what I'm going for. So let's do a few of these kind of jabbing motions. But again, I'm not really pushing in, I'm just ever so gently. Oh, that's really nice. You see this little fold that's come out here? That's kind of what we're looking for. If you look at real roses, all of their leaves tend to have, or all of their petals have little folds in the edges, and that's what makes them look fluffy and delightful. Ooh, I can feel that almost ready to fall out. That's better. Okay, that's the 2 cotton ones done. So one of these is a large pattern size, which is this one, and one of these is a medium pattern size. So we'll go into the construction of the flower once I've tooled all of them, but there'll be 5 medium petal things and then 5 large petal things. Next one. The next one is silk, so I'm not too worried about burning through that one as much as I was with the cotton one. For my silk layer, I'm doing a white Duion. Oh, and this is one that I think we did last week. So let's see if we can achieve this same kind of shape. And I think this was the medium one. I'm going to try and keep them grouped together because once you tool them, it becomes slightly more difficult to tell which one is the medium and which one is the large. And then once I've tooled that, maybe this one is the medium, let's see. Oh, it is the medium, so the one we did last week must have been a large then. It must have been. Yes, okay. So, then once I've done that one, I will do the velvet backed cotton that we voted on last week. Right, that should be hot enough. Yes, I'm going to turn this off. So once again, that same kind of motion. And you can choose how much of the petal you want to curve backwards. You can either go all the way around it, just the top. Sometimes on some roses, you can kind of see that it's kind of done in 2 halves. So you've got like one bit and then another bit there that's more like this. But for this one, I'm just trying to keep things the same. So I'm just curling about 3/4 of the way up. Or 2/3 even, from the edge there. And turn the flower tool back on. That's the problem with the small nozzles, is that they heat up really fast, but then they cool down really fast as well. So it's constantly flicking on, off, on, off. But it's better that than burning things, so. With the bigger ball tool, once it's heated up, it will kind of stay hot. There we go. That's pretty good. So that'll go on my on my medium pile. Now let's do the velvet that we backed in the blue cotton. Now I will turn off this for that, and I need to keep reminding myself to make it slightly damp. There's a lot of waiting in these things. When I make my videos, I get the chance to kind of chop out all the waiting and then it's a 10-minute long video about things. And then when I'm actually doing it live, you realise how much time it actually takes. Right. Hopefully that's not too hot. No, that seems fine. Oh, no, it's a bit too hot. Okay. Still too hot, you see? Ah, more waiting. try again. There we go. Okay, I think I've kind of decided that with the cotton version, I like the jabbing motion more. I like the shape it gives me more. But with the silk version, I quite like the rolling it around the outside. Shari says, would a spritz from a spray bottle be too damp for flower making? Yes, it makes it too damp. So what you want to avoid is seeing the little patches. You know how fabric goes dark when it's wet? You don't want to see that because that's not an even coverage of dampness. So you definitely, even when making it damp inside the damp cloth, you don't want it to be damp to the extent that it changes its color and goes darker because it's a bit more saturated than it would normally be if it was dry. I hope that makes sense. Now, something you can do with the spray bottle, which is something that I sometimes do, is instead of having the cloth damp by wringing it out at the sink and whatever, you can get a spray bottle and a dry flannel and just spray the flannel and then press the fabric leaf inside it. That will give you a good result as well. Okay, that's going to be enough on this one. What I like about the velvet is it kind of the nap of it crushes as you tool it. And I think that's what makes velvet a really lovely material for working with, because you get that depth of, that change of color depth. So if I turn it over and some of the leaves don't look tooled enough, like this one over here, I'm just going to tool it a little bit more. Try and indent it a bit. There we go, that's now catching the light differently. I'm very aware that this velvet looks very black on camera, but it's not actually black. It's like a really deep grey with cool blue undertones. Right, which one was that one? This one looks like it was the medium. And now we'll do the large. Oh, I didn't dampen this one. Okay, do you know what? I'm gonna see what happens if I just leave it dry. Oh, I guess it's not tooling as well. Okay. Turn off the tool and dampen the leaf. The petals. Leaves, petals, they are technically different, but I tend to use the term interchangeably. Sorry about that. I will gently press on it to speed up the process, but I wouldn't normally advise doing this. Yep, that's damp enough. Hopefully that flower tool is hot enough and not too hot. Oh, maybe it is too hot. Okay, I don't think I ever want to do a cotton flower again. Although I have enough materials to make a second cotton flower, so I shall make 2 cotton flowers, and then I shall never do cotton flowers again because I don't like how the tools work with the cotton. But while I'm set up here with the cotton one, we'll finish it. But I don't recommend cotton, I've decided. Jackie says, thank you for showing your experimenting even when it doesn't work out. Nice to know this happens to others. Oh my goodness, it happens all the time. There's a lot of situations where, so I am mainly self-taught in millinery, so I've been on a few courses, but I largely learned through reading books and trial and error. And there has definitely been a lot more error than there has of anything else. But the thing is, I also don't like wasting things, so when I go wrong with something, I do find ways to salvage it and reuse it or something, because I don't like the idea of just getting rid of something or putting something in the darkest depths of a cupboard just because it didn't quite work out how I wanted to. So, honestly, there is generally a way out. It's just how you choose that way out to be. Sometimes that way out is completely dismantle the whole thing and reuse it in a different way. Or sometimes the way out is just find a different way of doing something. Or you struggle through with this one, with the cotton flowers, and then decide never again. Definitely never again. I think the jabbing definitely works better with the cotton and the velvet, just because it's so thick. The cotton is thick and the velvet is thick. And so rolling it nice and neatly like on the thinner silk Duion isn't really working out. So I've got to jab it in. Just had a thought. I have a book on flower making, a vintage one, I think from the 1950s. Maybe, husband, if you could come through and find this book for me in the bookshelf, that would be really great, because I think we could all do with having a look at the instructions on what we're supposed to be doing. Because I'm suddenly feeling very insecure about my methods today. It's the one called Making Flowers by Jenna Kebbel, I think. It's over there in the top. It's the flat one at the top. Flower making, yep. Thank you. Okay, we've got the book. We'll go through this book in a second and double check the instructions. Okay, I think I'm happy with this one. I don't want to over jab it. Let's have a look. So can you see how the edges, it's now really dark in the middle and then it's lighter on the edges. That's where the nap is crushed and it's curving over a bit. That's exactly how I want it. Do I need another thing? Okay, then we've got the organza left over. The organza, we're going to roll the edges by hand and not by using a tool, because I've tried it with a tool before and the organza doesn't seem to respond to the tool very well. It responds better to hand rolled edges. So yep, the tool is turned off. Let's roll the edges of the organza and then we'll have a look at the book and then we'll finish tooling the flowers. So this is where we need to decide which coloured organza we want to go with. So there's black and there's white. Now, I backed the leaves in white, so I'm guessing I should probably go with the white organza just to lighten the whole flower up a little bit. So I think the layers of my flower will be maybe blue, then white, then the velvet with the thunder grey. Oh, it's easier to do this with the one that's not already cupped. So we'll go, I think, yes, blue at the bottom, then white silk Duion, then the blue cotton-backed thunder grey velvet, and then white? What do we think? Like this? Or is it better with the black? Like this? Oh no, that's too much contrast, isn't it? I think the white's better. I would do a poll, but... Oh, whoopsie, the camera went. I would do a poll, but I think I'm kind of set on the on the white. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just going to change the battery on the overhead. It would help if I could get it out. Let's see if tweezers will help. Oh, the battery is stuck. First internet problems and now I can't change a battery. Let's try these tweezers. Ah, got it. There we go. I wonder why that happened. Right. Hopefully we're back. There we go. Lovely. Camera back up and running. Shari says, I think the white is nice as well. Black makes it look too dark. Yes, I agree. Let's go with the white. So, with the white, I'm going to hand roll the edge of the petal. So you can do this with a flat set of tweezers that you can heat up. Just if I had my iron set up, the way I would heat the tweezers up is put the tweezers in between a damp cloth, pop the iron over the top and steam it with the steam iron setting, and that should heat these up enough to be able to curl the edges. And the way you would do that is you just grab the bit of flour and then roll it up and around and you get a rolled edge. But I find that too fiddly. I actually think it's easier to hand roll the edges. So I'm just going to use my thumb and my forefinger and kind of pinch it together and see if I can get it to roll underneath. This takes a little bit of practice, but you can get there. There we go. Look at that. That's rolling in. And you will get a few frayed edges with this, but don't worry about that. That's just fabric. Okay, I might have rolled that a bit too much. I'll unroll it a little bit. There we go. In fact, something a bit more accurate, if you wanted a more realistic looking rose, is you could roll this section here and then this section here. So it would be rolled here and then the other side rolled like that. And you see, that looks a lot more like a rose shape. So never mind about my initial roll, I clearly wasn't thinking. You see what I mean about all this taking so much time? I'm having to concentrate so much I can't talk. And it doesn't matter if it's a bit wonky, like this one. Can you see how it's really wonky on that side? Oh well, it doesn't matter. Jackie says, are you rolling the organza wrong side up? I need to brain through that question. Because the organza doesn't have a pattern to it, it kind of doesn't really have a wrong side or a right side. When we come to assemble the flower, the bit that's rolled under, so if I put it on the table, it's curving underneath it now. This is the right side on the top and the wrong side is underneath. I hope that makes sense. So it's, if you imagine, if we look at what we just tooled with the tool on the silk Duion, the edges are also rolling underneath. This is kind of the same thing. So if you feel like rolling the edges of your silk Duion by hand, you can give that a go. I did try that a few weeks ago, and I found that the silk Duion just frayed so much on the edges in a way that the organza didn't. So I figured that I'd rather tool the silk Duion, but hand roll the silk organza. I hope that helps. So these are both right side up, and then if I turn them round, flip them over, these are now wrong side up. So the edges are now curling inwards. This is the wrong side. We'll touch back on this when we assemble the actual flower, because then you'll definitely, you'll be able to see the effect that it gives being done like that. So this was my medium. Now I'll roll the edges on my large, and I'll just pop these 2 black ones out of the way. And I haven't dampened the organza, it doesn't need it for the rolled edges. And if you don't have any flower tools and you still want to make a nice looking rose, you can do that out of the organza by just rolling edges. It's a slightly different pattern to this, and I have a video on that, which I will link to maybe at the end of the stream. You know, when the stream finishes and there's an end card, or maybe in the comments or something, I'll link to it then. I have a video on how to hand make flowers without flower tools. Because you can still make very pretty flowers without the need for the expensive flower tools. But the flower tools are fun, so if you feel like treating yourself to a set of flower tools, why not do that? But if you don't feel like spending an extortionate amount of money on some bits of brass and a soldering iron, then you don't need them. You can have just as much fun without them. See, on the big one, it's not quite the same just rolling up those edges. I'm going to try and roll the middle as well, just because of the size. Oh, that's better. Yes, let's roll that middle section. What I like about the silk organza, silk organza, is that it even feels like a real rose. So if you ever, if you've got a garden, or you know someone who's got a garden and they allow you to handle one of their real roses from a rose bush, if you feel it, and then if you feel a bit of silk organza at the same time, you'll notice it's a very similar texture. Especially if it's very good quality silk organza, if it's got quite a tight weave. Ideally, I would have washed my hands before this, because this is white silk organza, and I can feel my hands are slightly clammy. So this might end up looking a bit grey on the edges, but never mind. There we go. That's those edges rolled. Can you see how much more it now looks like an actual rose petal shape? Okay, let's get the tool back out, and we're on the finishing stretch now. We might even get this done within 2 hours. Although I'll probably end the stream at about 10 past because of the 10 minutes of no internet at the beginning of the stream. So let's see if we can get the next bit done in about 40 minutes. Right. So I've got my soft sponge, and I'm going to turn on my flower tool now. This bit should be fast, and I'm going to start with I'm going to end on the cotton one, just because I'm very paranoid about burning it. So I'm going to do the velvet and the silk Duion first, and then I'll end with the cotton. And this time we'll be tooling the flowers on the right side. So I hope that answers your question, Jackie. So the wrong side is where it's curling under, and the right side is currently where we haven't tooled on yet. So before we were tooling with the small ball tool in these dimples, and now we flip the flower over and use the bigger ball tool, and I'm using the 2.5 centimeter size. And if you want the flower petal pattern, if you have a look at one of the previous streams, I kind of put the pattern out in front of me and gave you the measurements and gave you time to take a screenshot of using the pattern. I will one day actually produce the pattern as a download that you can download, but I haven't got around to that yet. Springtime seems very busy. First I thought I was having a very busy Christmas, and then I thought, by the time it gets around to spring, I'll calm down and get all the things, little admin things done that I wanted to get done, and that hasn't happened. Spring has been even more busier than Christmas. Oh well, can't complain. At least I've got things to do. Okay, that tool is still heating up. Let's have a quick flick through my book. That ball tool will take a while to heat up. So, this is a book called Flower Making by Clara Kebbel. I don't recommend you go out and buy this because actually there's not a lot of information in it. I just like to have, I like to collect vintage books and I came across this one, so I bought it. I think there are much better books on flower making that you can get, but I just specifically, a more modern ones, especially ones produced in the 80s and 90s. If you'd like a reading list, I will post a link to my website where I have a list of the books that I own, and you can go through that and have a look at what books tickle your fancy. And then most of them you can find on Amazon or secondhand on eBay or something like that. So this book was published in... When was it published? Where's the publishing page? 1951. There it is. Let's turn to where it's got the rose. Where is the rose? Oh, you see, this tells you how to make the stamens, but I've already taught you how to do that, so you don't need to get that from the book. This is similar to what we're doing, but it's not quite a rose. Making a rose. Oh, okay, so they seem to be making a rose out of 3 sets of 5 petals, and then some plain single petals, some leaves, and this is called a calyx. This is a bit that should go on the underneath of a flower. We'll talk about that later. And you see how they're also using a ball tool to tool the petals up and up and up. So that's still not hot enough. Let's have a look. Stages D, E, and F. Oh, and look, G. This is them rolling the edges of the petals. Let's have a look at stage D, E, and F. Making the rose. Circle 1. Iron on the top of the petals, press hard into each with tool 2 so that they form 5 cups. Then with tool 2, press very hard in the middle, still from the top. This will make all the petals close up. D. So I think that's talking about this step here. So that's this cupping step. So I'm actually doing things in slightly different order than they suggest. But also I'm going for a very different looking rose to this. This is more of your kind of classic garden rose, whereas I've kind of gone for a hybrid garden tea rose thing that looks like a rose. Okay, next, circle 2. To have 2 petals closed and 3 open, with tool 4 press 2 petals on the top and then reverse the circle, and using the same tool press 3 petals. Again, reverse the circle and press into the center with tool 4. So that's step E. Oh, that's this one. So they've pressed it in on one side, then they've flipped it, and then they've tooled the other side. So that's another way to do it. You can just do it with one big ball tool and flipping the petal rather than tooling just the edges. Is there a sizzle? Oh, there's a sizzle now. That's going to be too hot now. Right. I'm just going to test it straight on the... Oh, that's definitely too hot. I'm going to leave it to cool down a bit. Rachel says, Millinery for Every Woman by Georgia Kerr Kay has a huge section on flower making and flowers. It's a book from the 1920s, although I think it was reprinted in the 1990s. I think I have that one. Haha! Here it is! Obviously, couldn't get hold of an actual vintage copy, although wouldn't that be a gorgeous thing to own? So I think it was published in America, so I don't think I'd be able to find a copy of the original in the UK. Let's have a look at the flower section. I know it's at the back. There it is, flowers. What have we got here? To make a rose center. The pictures are very, very, very dark. Oh, you see, this is... Okay, so this is a kind of... Looks like a folded rose. That's interesting. So that's interesting. So this is from a folded ribbon. And you gather the edge and make it up. That's a very 1920s style trimming on cloche hats. Again, folded ribbons, more folded ribbons, more folded ribbons. Ooh, a wired leaf. I haven't tried one of these. That's one to try. Let's see the tool. Yep, okay, it's perfect. We'll come back to the Georgina Kerr K in a second. Okay, right, while the tool is just right, let's use it. So this is the right side of the flower. And I'm going to press, not into the center, not yet, but more into the cup of the kind of tip of the petal, but not quite to the edge. So where the lip starts to fold over, that's where I'm pressing into. And I'm going to use my other hand to support the cushion and press inwards. So, just like this. There we go. I'll just do this quickly and then we'll talk about what's going on. And the last step, I am now going to press into the center, like this. There we go. There it is. So, can you see how the edges have kind of crinkled up? And they're no longer kind of folded outwards, as kind of expected. Some of them are, some of them aren't. There's a lot of variation, and variation is good. Variation is what we're looking for. Variation looks more natural and realistic and more interesting to look at as well. You don't want a flower that just looks the same all the way through, because then it looks very, very kind of shop bought and factory made. But because we're making the flower by hand, we want that variation to be there so that people know that it's a flower made completely from scratch for a very personal use. I mean, obviously you don't want it to look awful, but you know what I mean. I hope you know what I mean. Right, next one, before the tool cools down too much, the velvet. Right, hopefully that's still warm enough. Let's see. The velvet is going to turn out differently because we've got it backed in cotton, and also it's a lot thicker. And what the tool does is, you can see the immediate color change there. That's the nap of the velvet being crushed. So the nap is the fibers standing upwards in the velvet. That's what makes velvet feel soft and luxurious and kind of like a carpet rug. And what you're doing with the tool is you're not only shaping the leaf, but you're also crushing that nap in the process, so it catches the light differently. I think it looks kind of cool. Like a little starburst now. Can you see those? Ooh. And as I'm pushing the tool in, I'm pressing on the foam pad kind of and providing that cupping shape from the bottom. I've seen some people just kind of put a load of padding into a bowl, into like a ceramic bowl, and do the same kind of thing in multiple sized bowls. But when I tried that, I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted it to, so I've settled on using a cushion rather than a bowl. And now let's go for the center. Press straight in and then kind of wiggle it around. So there's two different motions going on here. There's this kind of twist motion, and then there's a rotate motion like this. So one motion is doing, if I show you without the flower, this action, so circles, and the other motion is staying in the same place and wiggling the tool, rotating the tool in one spot. And you're going to need to use both those options. So the first step is to go right into the center and rotate the tool in the same spot, and then start to gently roll around in a circle. And what that does is that's what's going to close those leaves up and form the cup. And then I'm pressing on the flower, on the foam pad to help it cup around the hot tool. There we go. I think that tool's now too cold. Let's heat it back up. So that's what the velvet now looks like. And that's the wrong side of the velvet. Looks a bit creased, the cotton. Yeah, I'm not going to use cotton again, which is a shame because I really like the colour of this. But if this was a silk Duion, I think it would have worked a lot better. Oh well. And this was the large one. I'm going to start trying to keep it all in the right kind of order. What have I got left to do? This velvet one and then the cotton ones. Actually, while the tool was cold, well, colder, let's do the cotton before it gets too hot again. Oh, I can feel that ball trying to wiggle out because it's very heavy. Just tighten that up a little bit. Jackie says, do you always back the velvet with another fabric? Personally, I do. I think there's a way to do it without having to back the velvet, but once I tool the cotton, I'll get a piece of unbacked velvet out and we can have a look at how floppy it is and talk about why you want to back it. So let me just do the cotton leaves and then we'll get the piece of velvet out. So hopefully that won't burn. Good. It's not burning. The tool is cold and hot enough simultaneously. I think someone said earlier it was Michael said, the tool sounds a lot like Goldilocks. Too hot or too cold? Yes, exactly. Very much a Goldilocks moment. And you see how here, this has now got a fold in it? I don't care about that. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Some of them have folds, some of them don't, some of them have creases. It doesn't matter, as long as there's some kind of shaping and cupping going on. And in case you weren't here for the last stream, Jackie, all of these fabrics are stiffened in some way. So I can go over that again as we assemble the flower, but I'm very conscious of the time. So I'm going to quickly plow through. Oh, look at that. So we've gone from this kind of flat shape to this wispy, delicate looking cotton. Right. Don't want to mix up the sizes. Shari says, so the soldering iron is now called Goldie. What a good idea. Yes, she is now named Goldie. Goldilocks. She joins my all my other equipment that has names. In case you don't know, I have a oh, we were gonna do the other cotton. I have a poupée head named Anne for famous heads, of course, Anne Boleyn. And I have another famous head called Charlie for Charles I of England, who was beheaded. And then my dress form is called Claudia, for Claudia Schiffer, the model, because for some reason my first boyfriend's mum thought that I looked like Claudia Schiffer, and I thought that was very funny because I don't think I look anything like Claudia Schiffer, so I called my dress form that instead. Rachel says, the folds and creases and irregularities add to the organic look of a handmade flower. Exactly. And that's the kind of look I like. And if you didn't like that irregular look, then you'd kind of be looking at getting flower molds rather than flower tools, because with a flower mold, you'd get exactly the same pattern every time. But I'm not really too interested in that. I think we can hide this bit quite easily on the edge there. It'll be fine. I can always kind of maybe stitch a little pleat into it later to conceal it. But I think this is the middle one anyway. The middle size. Yes, it is. So it'll be lost in the center of the flower. So that's large. This is all mediums. Let's turn the tool back on. Let it heat up for the velvet. What were we doing? Oh, we were discussing Georgina Kirkay. And, I was going to show you some unstiffened velvet. Luckily, I've got some right here. So, this is unstiffened velvet. I'm not going to undo it all because it will just go everywhere. I know there's lots of cut up bits in this one. But look at how subtle, kind of supple and flowy and like liquid this is. This is going to be very difficult to tool with a flower tool, because if something's this floppy and you heat it with the flower tool, when you take the flower tool off and it cools down, it will just lose its entire shape and go back to being all floppy. So you want to stiffen your fabric to the extent of what you think the final flower needs to hold its shape. So some flowers will require more stiffening and some flowers will require less stiffening. So with this particular flower, I think I stiffened everything with a PVA solution of 1 part PVA, 2 parts water. That's by volume. So 1 tablespoon of PVA glue to 2 tablespoons of water. That again, we go over this in the other live stream. But with the velvet, it's very difficult to stiffen velvet without, because the PVA solution is very liquidy. It kind of seeps through and you can be in danger of ruining the velvet by the glue seeping through to the other side and kind of leaving patches of hardened mess on the nap of the velvet fibers. So to avoid that, I tend to back it with fabric using Bonder web in between them, and that Bonder web is what's providing it, is what's stopping it from being too floppy. So this one, can you see how if I try and fold it, it kind of buckles and flips in and out like this? Whereas with this one, if I try and do the same with the same amount, it just rolls between my fingers very easily rather than flipping and buckling. I have discovered that you can stiffen velvet very well with a chemical stiffener that you could use to stiffen a felt hood. And I go over that in my stiffener PR review of husband, maybe you can pop that into the chat for everyone. It's the one with Karina's Futrex stiffeners. You know the one I mean. Just pop that in the chat for everyone. I show you how I tested out one of these chemical stiffeners to stiffen some of this silk velvet there. Let me pop this away and answer some of your questions. There's been a lot of questions. Rachel says, my millinery mannequin heads are named Zelda, Mavis, and Tiana. Zelda co-hosted my stream when I was still streaming regularly. Oh, lovely. Are they named after something? Is it maybe a reference that I'm not getting? Or is it just a fun set of names? And Sherry says, so stiffening the fabric first, then cut out the petals, not cut out the petals then stiffen. Yes, it's much easier to stiffen first then cut out, because the stiffener also helps to avoid the edges from fraying. So if you cut the petals out first and then you stiffen it, you are at the risk of the edges of the petals fraying as you stiffen them. So yes, stiffen, then cut out, then tool. And hopefully, is this sizzling? Let's see. Yep, that's sizzling, that's hot enough. And Labricaloo says Zelda is named after Zelda Fitzgerald because she's a 1920s reproduction. Ooh, very fancy. There was a TV show some years ago, I think, called Zelda, about Zelda Fitzgerald. It was, I seem to remember it was passable. I can't remember if it was very good or very bad, but I remember watching it and enjoying it for what it was. So if anyone's interested in that, you can go and look that up. I can't remember if it had many hats in it. So, last step, almost. Last step before the flower assembly. It's exciting. Mavis is a 1930s reproduction and named after a friend of my grandmother. Oh, how sweet. What a lovely name. Look at all this texture that tooling the velvet has added to it. You can now see all those light changes in it. With the light bits is where the nap has been crushed by the hot flower tool, and the dark bits is where the nap is still standing up because it was trapped in a fold as I was tooling it. So this is as good as the velvet's going to get. The velvet is never going to cup as much as the, for example, silk Duion. Look at that. Let me pop the tool away. Oh no, we should really try and tool, before I put the tool away, let's quickly compare the level of cuppage, I guess. So this is my conclusion, is the silk Duion has really taken up this cup shape. So if I kind of rest it on its side, you can see how much those petals have really closed in on themselves. Next after that is the cotton, which has kind of got some cupping to it, but not as much as this one. You can see the difference there. And then the most flat is the velvet. But with the velvet, the idea was to just give it this crushed effect. So I'm pretty happy with that. The velvet will be supported underneath by the silk Duion. So again, when you're designing these kind of flowers, that's something you want to take into consideration, is how you're positioning the layers together. So you want a very stiff layer underneath everything that will hold most of the shape, and then you kind of have lighter fabrics as you go up. And I know we said that this one was like a really stiff fabric, and it's the thickest fabric out of all of these three, but it's not going on the bottom. But that's because it's not going to hold that cupping shape. So if the way I assemble this flower would probably be blue underneath, then the white, and then the velvet, purely because I want that variation of the white poking through between the blues. And then on the very top is the lightest layer. It's going to be my organza, which we haven't tooled yet, and we'll get to it in 1 second. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it's 4 layers of petals for part of the flower. This is half of the flower. And then the second half of the flower is the same petals in the same order, but just slightly bigger. So let's quickly tool the organza. Now the organza hasn't been stiffened, if we go back to the stiffening question. You can stiffen it if you want to. I think I just couldn't be bothered. Now with the organza, I actually don't want to tool it as much because it's really delicate. So I'm just very gently going to press into the corners. I don't need to do any of that motion that I was doing earlier with the thicker fabrics, because it's just straight away taking up that shape. And in fact, I think this white silk organza is a much better quality than the black one that I had. Because in my other flower, the black silk Duion wasn't taking on this good a shape. So I'm quite pleased with that, actually. So once again, I'm just making sure the edges are turned in on the underside. And let's just finish off. Oh, this is looking so pretty now. I'm very pleased. I mean, apart from the fact that I really don't like working with the cotton, but never mind. Right, let's turn the tool off. Oh, it is off. Okay, next we need to assemble it, but before I fully put the tool away, what I'm going to do is kind of slot each petal, each layer of petal into the other. So I'm going to make sure that there's enough of a dimple. Then I'm going to pop in the next layer. And it doesn't matter if the petals are aligned. In fact, it kind of looks better if all the petals are slightly offset. Press into the center of the two. And I've definitely made sure the tool is actually turned off for this, because if your fabric hits the shaft of the soldering iron, it will burn because the shaft gets very, very hot, hotter than the actual tools. So you definitely want to make sure you're doing this bit with a semi-cooled soldering iron. Next one. Cup that all together. And the last layer for this section. There you go. You can see if I keep it held like that, all the pretty colours in the layers. Oh, let's read a bit more of that chat. Rachel says, and Tiana is named for my after my cousin's daughter. Also a very pretty name. And Sherry says, I know the cotton has been a struggle, but the blue coupled with the black velvet is truly stunning. It is, isn't it? It's really nice. I think it would have been easier with a silk Duion in blue. But I'm working with what I had, so I'm not going to go and order some bit of fabric just because, you know, whatever. Right, so this is now the larger petals. Tooling that center, popping in the next layer. And this isn't the last step yet, guys. We're on the finishing stretch, but this isn't the last step. And popping in that velvet. And then the white organza. In it goes. There we go. Oh, that's nice and pretty. Right, now I can turn off the flower tool. We're not going to need that anymore. Oh, it was turned off, but I'm going to take the ball head out and then set it aside to cool so that I don't burn myself. Oh, that's just putting away the tools that are cool enough. Okay, that big one certainly isn't cool enough. Where is my kitten? My kitten is asleep, so she's not going to go and wander over here. I'm just going to transfer this away, out of my way, to the edge of the table. And then we'll actually assemble the flower. How exciting. Several weeks after I thought I would have finished it. Lovely. So, Sherry says, waste not, want not. We have all learned about cotton and that counts for something. Exactly. Right. So, here is the last step. Oh, husband, the camera straight ahead is about to run out of battery. Come and save me. while husband's doing that, let's have a look at the pieces we've got for assembly. We've got our 4 layers of medium petals, 4 layers of the large petals. We've got our stamens that we'd made last week. We've got our cotton bud, and we've got 3 velvet leaves backed in silk Duion. Oh, the camera's gone dark, husband, the front one. Can you come and overexpose me? Sorry, everyone. Just making sure that we all look. Yeah, that's better. Jackie says, cheers to husband for rescuing. Clap, clap. Hear, hear. He can have a chocolate when we're done. Actually, no. Better not a chocolate. I spent the week baking and I miscalculated some maths and I made much more bread dough than was necessary. So we've ended up with a loaf of bread, a muffin tin of turmeric and poppy seed muffins, and 2 great big giant plaited bread things with prune jam and apricot jam. So not a chocolate, but a helping of prune and apricot bread cake. Thank you, husband. Right, back to the flower. So we've got several steps to do here. Let's start by actually assembling the actual flower, because I'm going to be using glue and everything else I'll be using needle and thread, so we want the glue to dry. So I've got PVA glue, I've got just a little tiny pot of water just to wash the paintbrush, and I'm going to get a medium-sized paintbrush to use on the glue. Right. The other thing I have, or should have, is an awl tool. So this is an awl tool. This is very useful for millinery, not just for flower making. So when you're making felt hats and things, it's useful to have one of these if you ever need to pierce the felt with a sharp point to stick something through it, like an elastic prong, or add a trim to it that sits kind of inside it. So one of these is very useful, and I'm going to use it to prick the center of every single flower petal. So just find the center there and stick it through. And the idea is not to rip it. So all you're doing with the awl tool is moving the weave of the fabric around the awl tool and just making sure that it's wide enough to fit through. Go into the center here. There we go, there's now a hole there. Oh, I think I ripped that one a little bit, but it's stiffened, so it shouldn't rip too much. Sherry says, completely off topic, but it sounds like you both have experienced Bread Week, like on the Great British Baking Show. Yes, we actually call it the Great British Bake Off in the UK. I think they changed the name in America, like they seem to do for a lot of TV shows for some reason. I don't know why they do that. But yes, pretty much. It's definitely been Bread Week in our household. Matthew says, what I've experienced is a complete reversal of all my weight loss gains. I'm very sorry, husband. Would you like me to stop making bread and cakes? But you're not complaining. Okay, I shall keep that in mind, my darling. Right, so I'm going to open up the glue. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the idea here is to start assembling from the top layers and then we end with the bottom layers. So this is my stamens on a double-pronged wire, and I'm going to stick both prongs of the wire through the hole and stick that through. Oh, sorry, I realise I'm out of shot there. I'm just struggling to see something. Give me 1 second and I will explain everything. Okay, so I've pushed this up as far as it will go. There we go, on the stamen. Then, oh, the next layer is the velvet. That looks like it could do with having slightly a bigger hole in it, actually. Yep, the velvet is definitely the next layer, yes. I'm just making sure I'm getting all my layers correct. There we go. Up that goes. Next one is the white silk Duion. And the last one is... Oh, I think I started with the wrong ones, guys. Luckily, I haven't glued anything yet. These are the big ones. I need to start with the small ones. Wow. Well done me. Oh dear. Clearly it's been a very long day. Marjolaine says, are you using your big petals first? The answer is no. Use the small petals first, because it's the small petals that go at the top of the flower, if that makes sense. So yes, use the small petals first. Oh, needs a bit of extra pushing. Here we go. So, here is part of the rose. Right, we're not done yet, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the gluing process. Now that I know that it's all working pretty well and it all fits, let's pop some glue on things. So, you don't want to use too much glue, because even though it's in the center, if you use too much glue and it seeps through the fabric, you will notice it. So I'm just using the tiniest amount possible to hold everything together. And then I'm just pushing everything down. Right, bit more glue. Oh, that's too much glue. Okay, that's definitely too much glue. And this is just normal PVA craft glue. I guess you could use fabric glue, but I find that it's very difficult to use fabric glue. I feel like it's very gloopy and it's very stringy and it goes everywhere. So I prefer to use PVA because it's a bit more of the consistency of like an acrylic paint. And I think that's easier to manipulate it with a paintbrush into the right section of the flower. Right, and then a bit more glue. In fact, I might be reaching into the realms of just in general a bit too much glue, but I do want the flower to hold together. And I'm not too worried about the petals matching up on the right side. In fact, I think I've already mentioned, I think it looks a little better if everything is slightly rotated out of sync. So I'm just going to slightly rotate some of the petals. I hope that made sense. Right. Next is the organza. And these are going to be the larger petals, because I've now learnt my lesson. That lesson being is I should pay attention to what I'm doing. So the amount of area I'm covering with the glue is kind of about... when I started with the smaller ones, I was kind of putting just the tiniest bit of glue around where the base of the flower was, right at the wire. But as the petals get bigger, I'm kind of spreading the glue out a bit more. So this is now about 8 millimeters diameter around the wire. Now there's enough of it that it can kind of hold itself up like this. And I've gone silent again because I'm really concentrating. There we go. Every now and again, it helps to just apply some pressure to the base. Oh gosh, guys, it's looking really pretty. I just turned it over and peeked at it. It looks really good. I'm going to apply the rest of the glue and the 2 last bits of petals. And when I turn it round, you're going to love how it looks. I'm so excited. It's the white large Duion. Has anyone got any questions about the process so far? Oh, that wasn't enough glue there. Definitely wasn't enough glue. If anyone's got any questions, do pop them in the chat. Or in case you're watching this after it's been live, if you've got any questions for me, put them in the comments and I will do my best to answer as many as I can. Right, the last layer of petals. And I'm going to rinse my brush straight in some water because I don't want it to get all the bristles glued together. Right. Let me close up the glue and then we'll reveal what the flower looks like. We're technically done with the flower, but we're not done with the whole arrangement. So I will persevere and show all that to you guys in a second. Just make sure that that is... Oh, maybe that wasn't quite enough glue. Just still applying a bit more pressure to it, but look at this, guys. This is the rose. What do you think? I really like it, especially from the side. And with the stamens, with the multicolored stamens in the middle, I think it looks really pretty. Right, that needs to dry, and actually it needs a little bit more glue on the underside. And the way I'm going to dry it, I'll explain that in a second. Let me just put a bit more glue there because I'm not too convinced that that's enough to hold it. Just on the outside, I'm going to put some glue and hope that it sticks down. Right, putting the glue away again. Hopefully we won't need that anymore. don't think we will. I will need to go and wash my hands before we get to sewing things, but once again, here's the flower. What I'm going to do is it needs to dry upside down. You don't want to flip it over and dry it the right side up. So I'm going to bend the ends and hang it up on a clothesline, or in my case, my camera wire, which is right above me out of shot. So I'm going to put this to dry, then I'm going to wash my hands, and then we're going to finish making the whole spray. So we're going to add the leaves and add the rosebud and finish it off, and it's going to look absolutely lovely. So absolutely lovely, and I'll be back in about 1.5 minutes. Everybody, I'm back. That might have been a slightly longer break than planned because I had run out of tea and needed a refill. I think probably until the end of the stream, maybe I need another 20 minutes. I was hoping to be done in about 10 minutes, but I think we need 20 minutes to finish doing the rosebud and the petals. So, should we jump straight in? This was the cotton rosebud that we made in the last live stream, and I'm going to cover it in some, this is a strip of bias cut cotton, the same as the flowers, and this is organza cut on the bias as well. Both of these fabrics are now to cover the rosebud, so I'm going to need a needle, and I'm going to need potentially some pins just to hold everything together, and then some thread, and I probably want some thread to match as close as I can to the cotton, which is this one. Now I always find covering these cotton buds the fiddliest bit of the whole process. So sometimes this takes me ages while I battle with the fabric to cover the bud, and sometimes it happens rather quickly. So we'll see what kind of a day it is today. And here's a very quick way to knot the end of a thread in case you don't know how to do that quickly. You get your index finger, you wrap the thread around the index finger, hold down where it folds over, roll it, and then hold that knot really tight and pull the thread through. And here it is, a lovely little knot. Just chop the tail off of that. And I'm using quite a small needle today, so this is going to be rather fiddly, but let's see if I can do this kind of how I did on my other one. So this is what we're trying to end up with. This is the bud. So it's the two bits of fabric overlaid together and kind of wrapped around. So let's see if I can replicate that. What I should have done was ironed in a fold, but never mind. I'll just have to, so I don't have the iron next to me. Oh well. Let's see if I can get this to work. So I'm going to just wrap this fabric with the fold around the bud, hopefully covering See, that doesn't really look like a rosebud. Or maybe it does. No, that's too kind of... Let's try that again. So I like how it started, but I don't like how it ends on the bottom there. No, we can see that fold again. Okay, I'm going to start again. This time, okay, so maybe not in half. Let's try and fold it kind of just about 1 centimetre in from the top. Hopefully, if I just press it in with my fingers, it will keep that fold long enough. Okay. Almost. Almost there. Jackie says, could you use the petal tool to iron in a fold? I could, but I've put the flower tool away so it wasn't in my way. So I've kind of tied my hands up a little bit there. But the idea here is to just get a nice swirl of fabric in a kind of cone, following the cone shape of the bud. So it is possible to do, it's just very fiddly. Because you kind of end up with a lot of fabric at the bottom. Oh, there we go. Does that work? It's not the best bud. How did I do this one? How many folds has this one got in it? Oh, it's just got a very elegant... Oh, I see how I started it slightly differently at the tip. Okay. Let's try a different method. I'm just going to try and cover... this in half like this, then fold that edge one way, and then we'll start folding in the other direction and elegantly try and curve it down. Is that working? Well, it definitely looks more like a rosebud, but I've still not quite got it right. The trick here is to just cover all the raw edges. I think that's the bit I'm slightly struggling with. Oh, I think that's looking a bit better now. Yes, I think I'm going to stop fiddling with it and start putting the needle through it to hold it all in place. So I'm going to just catch the fabric at the very base of the rose petal. And bind it around and then put the needle through again and again and again. Okay, check that that's holding. That seems to be holding. Maybe a few more stitches. And then I'll tie off a knot when I'm happy. There we go. And then I'm going to cut off the excess and try and neaten up the bottom, but it doesn't matter too much because I'll be binding the bottom in some floristry tape later anyway. So I just want to start snipping off enough that it kind of comes to nothing at the point, just like that. That's fine. That's close enough. Here's the rosebud. That's not too bad. It's not the best rosebud, but it's not the worst rosebud either. It'll do. Right. Next, it's time to sew a couple of pleats into the leaves. And I probably don't want to use the light thread for this. No, definitely don't want to use the light thread. I want to use a black thread to match the dark sections. So once again, once I've threaded the needle, I am going to knot the end. So same way as before, round the middle finger, hold it down, roll, hold, pull. There's a knot. And then chop the end off. And to pleat it, I discovered a better way of pleating these than I used to do after my 100 pleats in the 100 leaves. So, right, I think we're back with the internet. Oh dear. Right, do you know what? We'll pretend that never happened and just go straight back to pleating the flower. So, I put the gathering stitch through. And then I just secure it with a few more stitches. And the difficulty here is the backing is white. So I don't want any of the thread to show on the white side of things. And then just popping in a knot to tie up. Ooh. Ooh. I can't see what I'm doing now. Okay. There we go. Oh, make sure there's no extra thread. There we go. That's 1 leaf, 2 leaves, and the 3rd leaf. There it is, there's my gathering. Pop a few more stitches in. Hopefully that's holding out enough. Yeah, that looks like it'll do. And then let's try and hide that knot in the middle there. There we go, that's 3 leaves done. What next? Now I have to remember if I put a bit of backing on the... Oh, I think I might have done a slight bit of backing. Let's see if the glue is dry yet. The glue's not quite dry enough, but we can still work with that. So, we've got our 3 leaves, our flower, and our rosebud. One last component that we need is just a little bit of extra fabric that's going to be just a little bit of backing fabric on there, I think. Or maybe with... No, do you know what? This flower doesn't need it. Sometimes you can just cut out a square of fabric or a circle of fabric and just pop it on there to cover any glue stains, but I don't think this flower is going to need it, so I'm going to leave it for now. The other mistake I've made on this flower is that this wire is too flimsy, so I should try and find a bit of thicker wire. Let's see, have I got some thicker wire here, or do I need to go and dive into my cupboard? Oh no, this'll do. So here's a thicker bit of wire. This is 1mm millinery wire, rather than the 0.4mm flower making wire. And I'm going to start attaching all of the components to this bigger bit of wire. Ideally, I would have just had the rose on the thicker bit of wire and then attach everything to it, but because I was silly, this is how we're going to have to do things. So, where are my pliers? Oh, I left them all the way over there. Do I have another set of pliers? No. Husband, come and rescue me. I need my pliers and I left them at the other side of the room during the break. So I've got my thicker bit of wire and I need to attach the rose to one end of it. Other end of the room. Over there by the TV. Thank you, husband. Yes, I'm going to need the tweezers for this bit. The pliers even. Thanks. So I'm going to bend back one end. Just to make sure there's no harsh point. And let's just squish that in. And then I'm going to attach this rose onto that. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have squished it in that much. Oops. I'm making this bit up as I go along because ideally I would have started with everything on the thicker wire. Okay. So I'm just going to hook that in there as close to the start as I can. Whoops. And then I'm going to start wrapping the thin wire around the thicker wire. And hopefully yep, that's not too bad. Trying to flatten everything down. And I'm not too worried about all this wire wrapping around itself because I will be covering it in some floristry tape in a second once we've put everything together. But I am trying to keep all the wires up close, with not too many gaps in between them. So just twisting around, and that's going to hold the rose a lot better. I've just had a quick idea to try and hold this rose together a bit better on this wire. I wonder if I could put a little bit of buckram on it to try and hold it all in. Or maybe it doesn't need it. Maybe once I put it on something it will hold together. Yes, no, that'll be fine without it. But I'll finish my train of thought anyway. If I was just putting this flower on, say, a hair clip rather than a hat, I might consider making a little circular base of a stiffer material such as buckram, just to hold the weight of it. Because if I just do this, can you see how in the big camera, let me change cameras, there we go, like this. So if I have it like this, you can see all these petals start to droop. So to avoid this droop, I might want to create a base for it. This is where the calyx comes in, or the calyx. If you made that out of buckram, that would be stiff enough to hold these petals upright like this. But I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to position it yet, so I'm just going to persevere in this way of making it. Oh. Here we go. Oh, look at that. That looks so pretty. I really like that. Next, I'm going to add the bud to the other end of the wire, but I'm going to try and add it in at the same kind of distance that I did this one. So it's about, where is it? It's about here-ish. There it is. So I'm going to wrap these wires, whoops, around. And then what I'm going to do is maybe just chop the end off of this wire, but not too much. So I'm chopping, ooh. Ooh. Ah, there we go. I left a bit of a tail on that, which I'm then going to fold over and secure that down. Now the bud I wouldn't recommend making on the thick bit of wire anyway. So if this had been the rose on the thick wire, the bud would have still been on the thinner 0.4mm wire, and you would have just done the same thing that I did there. So it's all nice and secure. And I'm going to wrap the thin wire around that folded bit of thick wire. Maybe that's a bit too long. It might be too late to change. Let's have a quick look. Oh, that's definitely too long. Okay, let's change it. Let's undo. Unfortunately, there is no Control Z. You have to manually undo everything. Whoopsie. I'm going to try and slide this down this wire a little bit. Will it slide? Nope, I've done it too well. Let's position it maybe much closer. I think about here actually. Which way am I going? This way. Oh. I'm getting a bit tired now, so I'm hoping to finish this off rather quickly. Okay, let's see. Before I do any chopping, have I got this right now? Yes, I think that looks a lot better. So, let me maybe cut it around here. And I'll bend it back again. And I'm just using the pliers to make sure that the wire is nice and flat against itself. And then I'm going to take this small wire back up. So here it is with the bud. And now we can add in the nice, pretty leaves. And I want to do it pretty much how I've done it on this hat over here. So hopefully everyone can see that. So I've got 3 leaves positioned. One kind of goes over here. And once again, the way to fix this all is to just twist the wire together. Twisty, twist, twist. And I am ending up with a very, very thick stem, so I think I'm going to just chop this spare bit of wire off at this stage because it's getting very thick. So that's one leaf. The second leaf is kind of just above it, just there. Lovely. Oh, I think this is coming together very, very nicely. And as I'm twisting the wire, I'm trying to keep it nice and taut so that there's no gaps. Okay, that's 2 leaves, and then the third leaf will kind of, how have I done this? Come out a bit more forwards and further down. Oh. Oh dear, another battery's gone. Not to worry. Here's the last battery. We'll definitely have to finish after this. There we go. Right, the third leaf. Actually, I'm going to position it kind of over here. The placement of the leaves and the way it all goes together is once again totally up to you. You could just stop at the flower. You don't need to add the rosebuds or the leaves or anything like that. You could leave it as it is. I just wanted to have something that looked a little more substantial. So this is for this pillbox hat. So I wanted it a bit more substantial, but it doesn't have to be. Right. And once that's done, I now have to cover up this mess of wires on the stem. Right, I think that looks pretty good. Let's have a look at it. Should we zoom in? Whee! That's as far as the zoom will go on that camera. Look at that. What do you guys think? I think that's turned out really rather well. Ooh, except for a bit of fraying on that leaf. That's okay. Here we go, just taking off that fraying. There it is. Almost done. So the last step is actually to add in some waxy floristry tape to the wire to hide all of this wiry mess. So we've just got to pick a colour. I was going to do black, but now looking at the general colour of the leaf, I think I'm just going to cover it in the white tape. Ideally, I would have covered it in the tape that's the colour of this blue. I think that would have looked a lot nicer. But the three various blues that I have, this is my collection of floristry tape. This blue is, as you can see, too green. It's not quite the right tone. It's on the green side, so can't use that one. This one I think is, oh, actually maybe I could use, no, it's too vibrant. This blue is kind of too purple. It's kind of too red on the kind of warm blue side. So one's too cold, one's too warm. And what about this blue? I think this blue is a bit too electric. That would really stand out. It wouldn't look as nice as with the white. So that's a shame that I don't have a floristry tape, the exact colour of that cotton, because that would have looked really lovely. But I'll just have to use this white one. And I'm going to start with the flower upside down, and it's going to start just a little way down and pull on it and start winding the tape up to the bud. And I'm slightly pulling on it and holding it between my fingers as I go because it's wax tape. And the way it sticks is with a bit of tension and a little bit of heat. So the heat is coming from my fingers. Rachel says you might want to mix the slate blue and white floral tape. Oh, that's a good idea. That's interesting. Maybe I'll try that on the next flower, just because I want to get this one finished. Yes, I wonder if that would actually give quite a nice effect. So when I get to a junction, as it were, in the leaves, I just make sure to fold one back, and I'm going to go in between them, and then fold another one back and go in between the other two. And this could do with a few more layers to cover up all that wire work. And then I just keep working my way down, and I'm going to try and angle the tape a little bit on a diagonal. That makes it much easier to travel it downwards. So can you see how there's a diagonal fold over here, a diagonal line where the tape is there? So I'm just working my way down the flower. And I'm just trying to make sure that the tape doesn't get all tangled as I work my way down. And then to finish the tape off, I'm going to give it a diagonal chop, doesn't matter which direction, but the diagonal chop just makes it blend in a little bit better with the seam. And then I'm just going to use my fingers to keep rotating it and just adding a little bit of friction, and so adding heat to the waxy tape, and that will stick it all together. So there we go. And then because it's all on a wire, I can bend it into how I want it to sit, and here's the finished rose. So after multiple weeks, we finally finished it. Ta-da! What do you guys think? I think it's turned out really, really, really well. Look at that, with the multicolored stamens and the multiple layers of the different fabrics. Look at it from the side, it's just delightful. And I think I think the colors are nicely balanced. So thank you everybody who participated in the last live stream picking out the poll, where we chose to back the velvet in the blue cotton. I think that was definitely the right decision because it just looks so delicate and lovely from the side. And then on the right side, the dark colors don't look too dark. So I now have to figure out exactly how I want to position it on something. I think just as it's sewn, I could put it on a hair clip, I guess. But I started off making this for my mum for her birthday, which was in February. So yes, sorry, that's a bit late, mum. But I want to put it on something so that she can wear it in her hair. So it might be on a clip, it might be on a little hat. My mum doesn't really like to wear big hats, so maybe I'll put it on maybe a little Alice band or something like that. I'll have a think about it. And once I'm done with that, then I'll probably post some pictures onto my Instagram. And if you'd like to see those pictures and other pictures of my work in progress of things that I do, you can follow me at Millinery. And if you end up making anything that you've learnt through one of my videos, do tag me in it. I love to see what all you guys get up to and what you will create. And thank you for sticking with me through all of these technical issues today. I really appreciate you guys powering through the bad internet, and I'm really sorry about that. I don't think there's anything I can do other than have a go at my internet service provider on Monday. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for learning with me. I hope you've learned something new. I've learned some new things from you guys. Thank you for all your comments in the chat. I had a wonderful time today. And hopefully see you next week, either in a live stream or for a video. Bye.